And my first, yeah, I should have had it on tape. Busted. But my first thought, and a lot of people wrote to me, said, well, he's a schmuck, he's a coward, he's afraid he's going to be called names, and I thought that was true. But I thought about it, okay? This is the answer to your question. I realized, no, it's not it. It can't be it, because if he really believed that the race was stolen from him, I don't mean understood it intellectually, he did. Anybody would, because it's pretty obvious. I mean understood it, accepted it, absorbed it, faced its consequences. What would he care if they call him names? Right? It's like the building's on fire, right? You're all high on coke. I'm standing here, the building's on fire, it's filling with smoke, and I think, no, maybe I shouldn't say anything because they're all in a silly mood and they'll laugh at me. Do you know what I'm saying? I better not say anything, they'll call me a name. They'll call me a worrywart. Okay, never mind, let's just burn to death. Seriously. Now, there are a lot of Democrats out there, especially in places like Nevada, Ohio, Florida, who are totally corrupt, right? And between them and the Republicans, there's not much difference. They're in business together. You know, the Secretary of State in Nevada, who started the Acorn propaganda drive, the guy's a Democrat. The Democratic Secretary of State, big Hillary Clinton supporter. Okay, so let's not take this naive view that the two parties are totally separate and opposed and unified. It's not like that. But when it comes to people like Kerry, and I think Gore, Jerry Nadler, congressman from New York, whom I discussed this with, I think that it's a complicated kind of denial, right? That the implications of this are so shattering, see, that they don't want to face it, they can't face it, because to face it means you got to do something about it. You have to actually face up to it. And when you're an insider and you haunt the halls of Congress, and those are your friends, and you eat lunch there, and you are on the take, and you're a millionaire, as most of them are, what are they supposed to do? Lead a fight, take us to the barricades, insist on election integrity, insist that we have the right to vote? I'm sorry, they're not built to do that. So it's a combination of careerism, complacency, corruption, and fear. At some level, fear, because this regime is extremely dangerous. Let's be honest, right? All these emotions, I think, mean that it's much better to say, no, sorry, no evidence, you're crazy. We change the subject, please? That includes Bernie Sanders, your senator, who says, he moves his lips, and Nancy Pelosi's voice comes out saying, well, they all do, not just him, all of them. They all say, if we talk about this, people will not turn out to vote, which is like one of the dumbest arguments I've ever heard. Okay, good, let's not talk about it. Don't mention it, don't tell people that their votes might be stolen, so they'll come out to vote, see? And then their votes will be stolen, and they'll never vote again. Brilliant. But it's stupid because it's not a serious argument. It's a rationale. It's why we shouldn't deal with this. And if you want the most illuminating historical analogy to understand where these Democrats are coming from, just go back and read about the Social Democrats in Germany in the 30s. It's exactly the same. Hitler was dismantling democracy in a major way and making life very dangerous. You know what I'm saying? Shredding everybody's rights, just like now, right? I mean, without the final solution in the picture. And what do? What did they say? Did they fight it? Did they face it? No. They had rationales. They'd say, oh, no, he says that stuff to appeal to his base, but he doesn't really mean it. Or no, big business is really pulling his chain. They're not going to let him go too far, right? Or, you know, the more conservative ones would say, well, you know, we actually kind of need him as a bulwark against Stalin. They all had their lines, you know. Well, that worked out really well, didn't it? Yeah. So that's why they are the way they are. That's my best explanation. I mean, there might be more to it, but I think that's it.
A question right here. Let's run around.
I just wondered if you could comment about DFA promoting the film Uncounted in light of what you're saying about the Democratic Party. And it also just occurs to me as a suggestion that all of us in Vermont could I'll vote early here and then go to New Hampshire and watch the elections over there, or go to other states and watch the elections, because those of us who know that, they're not going to try to steal the election here in Vermont, we can do something about it elsewhere.
I absolutely agree that y'all should go to New Hampshire, because New Hampshire is going to be in play, and New Hampshire has a history of stolen elections. If I could just tell you an interesting story about New Hampshire that you're going to find fascinating, and then I'll return to the first part of your question. Do y'all know about the results of the New Hampshire primary, the Democratic primary? The Clinton won, and remember the reason they gave? Why'd she win? She cried. Remember? She cried and she won. Makes sense, right? The woman bursts into tears and then everybody votes for her. See, that's a typical media explanation for how an election turns out the way it does. Check this out. 16% of the vote in New Hampshire is hand counted. Okay? The other 84% is op-scan counted. And the op-scans are programmed by the same company that programs yours, called LHS Associates, small private company run by Republicans. Feel better? Well, Barack Obama won the hand-counted vote by over 6 points. But Hillary Clinton won the op-scan counted vote by over 5. Strike you as a little odd? Yeah. 16% of the vote in New Hampshire is hand-counted, right? The rest are op-scan counted. Barack Obama won the hand-counted vote by over 6 points. She won the machine-counted vote by over 5. And there's more. A radio reporter in Connecticut named Dory Smith had covered the Connecticut contest between Joe Lieberman and Ned Lamont. Remember when the Democratic Party sat on its hands so that Lamont wouldn't win because they don't like reformers? Well, LHS programmed the machines in Connecticut too, and she had some reason to distrust the job they did there. So on a whim, Dory called about a half a dozen town clerk's offices in New Hampshire and said, "Say, do you have any problems with your machines on election day?" And they all said, "No, somebody from LHS showed up a few days before and fixed them and they worked fine." I'm not making that up, okay? So the Republicans control the machinery in New Hampshire as they do everywhere else, and I think that they gave Hillary a little help because at that point they wanted to run against her, you know? And then there's stuff about like 5 of her primary victories where they used machines, and there was like a 5-point discrepancy between the exit polls and the, you know. Meanwhile, Rush Limbaugh is on the radio telling Republicans to cross party lines and vote for Hillary. That was overt, but I think this was going on too, okay? Now the thing about DFA showing uncounted, and the question is what?
How does that, if you could just comment on that in relation to what you're saying about the Democratic Party.
Well, the DFA is what?
Democracy for America.
Yeah, that's not directly related to the leadership of the Democratic Party. It's a great group, and I'm glad they're showing uncounted. But I'm talking about the Democratic National Committee and the Obama campaign. When I say the Democrats, I don't mean everybody who's in the Democratic Party. I'm talking about the leadership.
But what about Howard Dean?
Howard Dean is nowhere on this issue. In fact, Steve Rosenfeld has just done you know, there's various people you can read on this issue. Steve Rosenfeld does great reporting for Alternet, you know, alternet.org. And he has just come out with a piece. He knows people at the DNC. There's one guy at the DNC who's concerned about the electronic machines and the op scans, who's been trying to get the DNC to vet the machinery, to look into it, to see who's programming what. And they're not interested. They're not doing it. They're just not interested. I don't get it, okay? It's another case of, you know, denial or what me worry. It's just the weirdest thing. But they should be all over those machines, you know? And they should be talking to Stephen Spoonemore. I mean, he's telling me stuff that they should be hearing, you know? He says that, you know, in the very possible event that they cannot steal this election from McCain, they are desperate to hang on to 4 Senate seats because they don't want the Democrats to have the 60-seat veto-proof, filibuster-proof majority.